Good afternoon. Should I go like this? Oh, no, that's three. That's too many. My name is Tim German. I'm the Vice Chair of the Vermont State Colleges Board. I'm a state representative from Essex Junction. I have 31 years in at VSAC before that in financial aid, so I've been highly interested in future of Vermont students and success of higher education for a long time. Today, very briefly, I just want to introduce our new Chancellor, Jeb Spaulding. Before I do that, I just want to say that your board for the state college system is very interested in the success of everybody. We really thank you. We know how hard you work. We thank you for everything you do for students, for the state, for the economy, at all the colleges. We have been very excited. We have some new personnel, a new president coming in at Johnson State. Very excited about that. We've had a couple of other new presidents in the last few years, doing a great job. I was personally very excited about welcoming Jeb as the new chancellor, because I've worked with him for a long time. I know his long-term commitment to the state colleges and to higher education in Vermont. So without further ado, introduce our new chancellor. We're very excited, Jeb Spaulding.
Thank you, Tim.
I will introduce Karen because I forgot.
Yeah, and it's very nice that Tim was able to be here. He just concluded his legislative session about, I think, 11 o'clock or midnight on Saturday night, and he doesn't look too much the worse for the wear there. So congratulations for finishing a good session, Tim, and thank you for being an active vice chair of the board. We also have another longstanding board member with us, Karen Luno from Franklin County. And Karen serves on our EPSL committee and will be serving along with Tim on a new long-range planning committee, which we're going to use to actually try to have a forum for thinking about some of the larger strategy decisions we need to put in place in order to. So they told me to speak into this one for a while, but that once I spoke for a minute, I could move away and the microphone will still work. Okay, good. So we're going to do that. We have a new long-range planning committee to help us sort of figure out what we need to do to actually make some bigger strategic and structural changes to ensure that all of the state colleges are vibrant and viable institutions into the future. So we're going to be looking forward to working together on that. I will mention that we do expect the chair of the board, Martha O'Connor, to be showing up shortly. She had another engagement that she had to get to this morning, but also wanted to be here to make sure that people knew that we have a board that is invested in the success of our students and our colleges, as the chancellor and all of you are. So I wanted to recognize that. I want to thank, if I don't do this in the beginning, I always forget. So I do want to thank Yasmin and the committee that put this retreat on, everybody that's worked hard to make this a successful day. I enjoyed David's presentation this morning very much and look forward to staying in touch as we go forward. And thanks to all of you for making the effort to come here today. You know, we live in interesting times. Actually, you know, sometimes we think we're living in times that we've never experienced before, but I recently had the opportunity to get through most of a book about Teddy Roosevelt around the turn of the 20th century, around 1900. And that was a time when the corporations were running wild. And there were riots in the streets. And the gap between the haves and the have-nots was like at all-time highs for them. And I thought, God, I thought this was the first time we were having that happen. When we're in a time right now where we have, corporations that are like classified as people. There's more money than you'd like to see in politics. And back around 1900, it was a total patronage system. It's like, hey, this sounds like where we were before. And it is. There's no question in my mind at all that we have a tremendous equity problem in this country, and that certainly Vermont is no different than the rest of the country. And the reason I mention that is because, well, what are we going to do about that as a society? And I would say that actually there's no way that in the current political climate you're going to do that by income redistribution. Vermont already has, if not the most progressive income tax system, one of the top 2 or 3 progressive income tax systems in the country. So you know what the answer is. The way we're going to actually address this problem is get more people into post-secondary education so they can improve their economic prospects and their social prospects. There are thousands, here we are coming up on graduation time, in another few weeks at the high school level, and there will be thousands of high school graduates in Vermont that do not go to post-secondary education next fall or the year after that. That is a tragedy. I mean, we heard the statistics, we all know them, that in the course of your lifetime, the difference between degree and non-degree, and depending on what kind of degree you're talking about, you can get into this a little bit, but obviously your economic prospects are much enhanced if you get post-secondary education. And that your unemployment, the unemployment rate for college graduates, since the Great Recession in 2008 and 9, it's like half for people that have a college degree compared to people that don't have a college degree. And as David pointed out in his presentation, people that have college education not only are better from an economic perspective, but their own lots are better because they are more involved in their communities. They are more likely to vote. From a state's perspective, we are going to be seeing our taxes go up more if people don't get post-secondary education, because people that do get post-secondary education are less likely to need public services, and they're more likely to stay out of correctional systems if they have more post-secondary education. So, what we do is really important. What we do is a matter of equity. Are we going to be part, and this is a question that I'm sure Linda Olson and others would say, hey, does the state stand up, or do we want to be part of like making the gap between the haves and the have-nots wider by making college less accessible for people, or do we want to do what we can to make college more accessible for our folks and allow them to achieve the kind of economic and life success that we hope they can? And my vote is we want to be part of the solution, not the problem. I'm sure you all want to be too. So we have important work. What we do isn't just, hey, we're in this for the business of it. What we do makes a difference for individuals. It makes a difference for society. And whether we succeed or fail in our mission together will have a lot to do with the future of Vermonters and Vermont. So we have important work to do. We have some big challenges ahead of us as the Vermont State College system, and you know what they are, but just to refresh our memory, the pool of high school graduates is getting smaller. It's been getting smaller for a number of years now. And when I got in and had some limited access to some institutional research, I said, could you please tell me what the projection is for the next 10 years of high school graduates? Maybe it's turning around in a couple of years. And it's not projected to turn around in the next couple of years. So, we have a declining number of traditional high school graduates going on to post-secondary education. Vermont, is along with New Hampshire fighting for the distinction of the least amount of state-level assistance coming from the state appropriation to support public colleges and universities in the state. I wish I was more optimistic about seeing significant change there. And despite the interest of legislators like Tim German, I think the prospects there are not really high. I don't think we can count on the state to bail us out of this situation. I wish it weren't true. When we get to the end of some of the solutions, maybe there's some things we can do to help, but that's a big challenge for us. And it's the same in the Northeast. By the way, of course you know this, the demographics are the same in the Northeast. And to the extent, even when we sort of pull from other states for our students to come to the Vermont State Colleges, one of them, it's generally from the Northeast, and they've got the same shrinking pool of high school graduates as we do. And they also have shrinking state support. And in that crush for the need to actually generate students, which is where the money comes from, the competition between colleges and universities in Vermont and outside of Vermont is greater than it has been. So we have a shrinking pool, declining or level state support, greater competition between colleges. You look at it from that perspective and you go, man, we got a challenging future, and we do. But does that mean that we can't succeed in actually ensuring that we have 5 vibrant institutions of post-secondary education within the state college system going forward? No, it does not mean that. There are things we can do. Some of them we can do on our own. Some of them we need to do with our partners and as a state policy. And as I mentioned a minute ago, thousands of high school graduates this spring, like last spring, will not be going on to post-secondary education. As a state, we cannot allow that to happen. And some of these things are, actually for the best interest of the student, for the best interest of the state, but also for the best interest of the Vermont State Colleges. Our survival depends upon us on a state actually helping more Vermonters recognize that they need to go on to post-secondary education. If we can get a number of the students that aren't going on now to go on to college by working with our partners. Tim, you mentioned you've been involved with VSAC for a long time. One of the greatest partners we have is the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation in terms of doing the outreach in the early years and trying to work with families and students and give them the support. They have a project going on in Lamoille County right now that should be very helpful for Johnson State College. So some of the efforts we do as a state are for the best interest of the state, but they also tend to help us out as well. And as you already know, we have a number of programs, sort of trio-related programs that get down into the middle schools and try to help people recognize that they can go on to post-secondary education. David mentioned the dual enrollment this morning. The Vermont State Colleges, by the way, were like, in the vanguard of pushing for dual enrollment in the first place. And as he mentioned, the research is clear that those students that otherwise may well have not gone on to post-secondary education, if they take a course or two at a college, either any one of our colleges within the state college system or any one of the other colleges and universities in the state, the likelihood of them going on to post-secondary education and succeeding are significantly higher. So, there's another thing that is actually in our benefit in terms of trying to help more students that really haven't gone on to college in the past to go on. So if we can move that dial a little bit as a state of Vermont, that's going to be one way to help the Vermont State Colleges. I'm very impressed with the work that I've seen going on among our campuses in upping the already high level of support we have for students. And many of you have strong first-year student experiences, building up your mentoring programs, strengthening your advising programs, early warning systems. There's a lot going on, but certainly, there is room for us to actually increase the number of students that actually not only just come to us, but then stay freshman, sophomore, and get their degrees. So if we can move the dial a little bit on college completion, that will be a big help for the Vermont State Colleges as a whole. Another area that I'm very interested in is actually helping more Vermonters realize what a great asset they have in the Vermont State Colleges, and actually trying to change the situation that I see now, where for many guidance counselors around the state of Vermont, many schools, many people, they look at the Vermont State Colleges as a second or third alternative. And I think that's very unfortunate. We can't, it would be a shame, a crime if we ever lost our commitment to being the public access point. We're proud of the fact that half of our students are the first in their generation to go on to family. We're proud of the fact that we take students that otherwise wouldn't be going on to post-secondary education. But we also need to know that, when I see, for example, you know, the START program up at Johnson State College, which is a National Science Foundation grant program that essentially allows Vermont students to go that are strong and interested in math and science and go tuition free. I mean, that is a great program. And, you know, at Castleton, we've got all kinds of expanding programs for students. Not only academic programs, but programs that gets them out into the community. That, you know, I'm amazed. I was talking with a student from one of our colleges who was just finished her junior year, and as part of the experiences at this particular college, I'm starting to think I'm not going to name names here of the colleges because I'll have to start keeping count of how many times I've named one or the other. But this particular just finished junior, as part of being at the Vermont State Colleges, has been to Nicaragua, has been to India, has been to Washington, D.C., and the experiences that these students can get at our Vermont State Colleges are like really high quality. And you know, I'm amazed when I look at the statistics that say that it's kind of ironic. Vermont has more post-secondary institutions per capita than any other state in the country. Yet, we have a higher percentage of our high school graduates that are graduating from college going to college out of state. And there's certainly nothing wrong, and we will never, you know, succeed, and we never should want to succeed in saying to our high school graduates that, you know, maybe went to 12 years of public schools in Vermont, hey, you shouldn't go out of state to college. Many of them are going to do that. But I think too many people don't realize that they don't need to experience the rest of the world by going out of state to college, that they have an affordable, quality option right here in the state of Vermont. And if we can just move the dial somewhat on that and have more of the students wanting to stay home. And actually, I think things are working in our favor on that. I think as people are asking, what am I getting for the investment? How much debt do I really want to have when I get my degree, whether it's my associate's or my bachelor's or my master's degree, what have you? You know, really, can I get a better value here? If I could go on, I mean, if I get my associate's degree at Community College of Vermont and my bachelor's degree at Linden State College, you know, I mean, is that a better value than actually maybe going down to Virginia or North Carolina when I could have done some life travel programs and so forth right here in the state of Vermont? I think more and more people are going to say, yeah, actually, this makes more sense for me. And that, you know, maybe if I don't even know if this is true, by the way, but, you know, maybe if I was going to Stanford or someplace like that, but, you know, if I'm going to any other of the thousands of colleges, it's what I get out of my education. Maybe what I get in my graduate programs, maybe, but, you know, actually going to college at one of our state colleges could be a great thing for many more people that are looking at them. So, you know, that's important. The question is, okay, so how do we get more people to look at it? And this is sort of a direction where, you know, I'm interested in, and by the way, I'll just do a little interruption now. I did ask, you asked me, do they want to ask me questions? And she said, yes, Jeb, that's why they're here. So I can't remember how much time I have, but I should stop pretty soon so that we can get to the questions. But I do want to tell you how I see us, like, actually, you know, building on our strong record that we have and actually moving ourselves to a new level. And oftentimes, you know, as the new chancellor, I've heard sort of a mantra that goes around the state colleges that go, okay, the Vermont State Colleges, 5 strong colleges, period. And what that tells me is, what I don't want to hear is that, you know, we're 5 strong colleges, leave us alone. What I see us as being is like one really, really strong, great system that when we operate together, as with 5 unique, vibrant, you know, creative institutions within that system, that we can be more than we can be as like individual institutions. And many of you may know that that the board and the chancellor's office, before I got it, for at least a year, we're going through a strategic inquiry process where literally hundreds of faculty, staff, students, community members were surveyed on what they wanted what their suggestions were for the state college system. And really, the bottom line of that is people wanted to operate more as a system, and that it should be frictionless, that if our students, we already say it's true, that if a student Castleton wants to take an online course that's offered by CCV, no problem. If a student from Johnson wants to go on a travel program that's offered by Linden State College, no problem. And as far as what we offer students, by having them come to our individual institutions but get the value of what we offer as a system, that's a definite advantage for our customer. And I think where I want to take us as a whole is I don't want veterans to have to go to Linden and see what do they do for veterans at Linden State College? What do they do at Johnson for veterans? What do they do, whatever, I can go on. They should be able to come to the Vermont State College's website and say, I'm a veteran, I want to see what the Vermont State College is, or maybe we'll even have a new name at some time in the future, but whatever, I want to come to this place and I want to find out what they do for me. Or if you want to find out what online courses we offer, why do you have to go to 5 different colleges to find out what they're doing? We can do this and actually, I think, drive more Vermonters to want to come to the Vermont State Colleges as a first choice when they need post-secondary education. We are not going to be to the point where we do everything, so we're not going to be like the Toys R Us of post-secondary education, but we can be pretty close, where like if people want to take a couple of courses, they can do that. They want to get a 2-year engineering technology degree program that could easily go on to some other program, we can do that for them. You want to be a weatherman or a weatherwoman or an atmospheric sciences person, as I guess we call them, you can do that. You want to, I don't know what, you want to play on a football team, we can do that for you. So you come look for what we have to offer at the Vermont State College system, and we're for you. So wherever you are in your educational career, whether you've been successful or not successful, whether you thought you were going or you didn't think you were going, we should be the place people want to look early in their options, and I think that can really help us. We also have to, I think about ways that we can save money. And I say it that way just because I try to avoid the efficiency word and some of those things like that, but it really does come down to it. And actually, I would say listening to David today, which was great, whenever I do listen to people like that, part of the things that first goes through my mind is, actually, we're doing pretty well, and I hear that, and oftentimes when I go around, and I'm still learning, I've only been on the job for 4 months here, and by the way, I hope to be a lifelong learner, and I will learn a lot from all of you, but when I've sort of listened to what some of the other systems have done to get efficiencies and to save money by centralizing some of the sort of operational services and so forth, I actually find that the Vermont State Colleges were kind of ahead of a lot of the places, and we've done pretty well in terms of trying to economize by having a good legal team at the Chancellor's office, or right now we're actually interviewing for a Title IX investigator that instead of having that fall institution by institution, we can do at a centralized level. We've done a lot in the IT area to centralize, but we need to be continuing to look for ways that we can do that. I'm pretty confident that there are additional ways that we can save some money. We also are not going to stop trying to reverse the trend of disinvestment from the state. The state has been in difficult financial situation, no different than the other states. One thing I would say is that, actually for a lot of states, level funded is like pretty good. The thing is, the state has sort of disinvested from the state colleges over the last 30 years. So it was like in the 80s, it was like 50% of the funds came from the state. Now it's like 15% of the funds. In many other states, that kind of disinvestment's happened over like the last 7 or 8 years. Now for many of them, it's been like a lot of millions of dollars, but they're still at 50% or 30% or 40%. So they're not where we are, but the trend has been down. I think what that means to me is we need to actually, as a state, look at how we're spending the money we're already spending. And I think the discussions are going to happen in the next year or two. Right now there are 35 states in the country that distribute a portion of the state higher ed funds on outcomes. Vermont doesn't. And when I think of the outcomes that are important, I was just reading it fairly recently, and I know many of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, there's an organization that's an initiative, a coalition called Complete College America. I know many of you are familiar with that, but if you're not, you might want to look it up on the website. They've got a great site, and their whole mission in life is like, what can we do to actually increase college completion once people come. And I'm not going to get into what they say, but it's pretty basic stuff, but it's pretty amazing, I think. But they also have a section on outcome-based funding as one of the things you can actually do to increase college completion by actually having some small incentive for the number of degrees offered to the people within your state. And I think that conversation is going to take place. As a matter of fact, I know it's going to take place this summer. Hard to say how that'll play out in the coming legislative session, but I do think the state college system ought to fare pretty well in that kind of a discussion. I think we will be, renewing the discussion on portability of our VSAC grants. I would emphasize saying that the Board of Trustees has not made a decision on what their perspective on that is, and the Chancellor does answer to the Board of Trustees. But I have a friend who is their child is going to Wake Forest this year, and they're taking the VSAC grant with them. And I'm saying to myself, man, I don't get it. All right, I won't go too far that way. I mean, I could see we could have a discussion about, well, what about Keene State College? It's closer to Brattleboro than Castleton, for example. And I don't know where people would come on down on that, but I can at least understand that one. Why have a system where you can take your VSAC grant anywhere when we're down to, really having a tough time maintaining the public infrastructure we have is really raises questions in my mind. So my point with that is that there are some ways that there's some things we can do to look at the amount of money that's already being spent and how can we think differently and more strategically about spending that to get what we want, which I believe most legislators and Vermonters would agree if they looked at the information is more post-secondary credentials of some level. I use credentials on purpose. The higher the better, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the highest. But post-secondary credentials to more Vermonters as soon as we can, and that our funding ought to recognize it some way. So there are things we can do. I'm not even sure. You asked me whether I'm down to like 2 minutes, or we are really that short? Okay, so listen, I wish I had some concluding line that would be great, other than to say that I am so passionate about the work that you guys do. I'm thrilled to be part of the team. I do think we, despite having big time challenges, and I don't want to understate those, we do. And we haven't even talked about like the changing world and the views on post-secondary education and technology and all that, how that's going to sugar off. But my mission in life is to help support strong leaders at the colleges, to support the faculty and the staff at the colleges, to ensure that we are all on a strong financial, at least stable financial footing as soon as we can, and that we then also think, and we're far enough ahead of that wave of the future so that we're not going to either get crushed by it or left behind by it. And I'm pretty sure that if we, as a group, want to keep doing what we've always done, we will be left behind in that wave. I also don't want to get so far out in front that we do something stupid and get crushed by it. And that's a big challenge. I don't know all the answers to it, but those are my missions in life. And I don't think we will succeed unless we're doing it as a team. And that means the Board of Trustees, it means the faculty, the administrators, the staff. Look, I got news for you, faculty members. Unless the admissions folks are successful, we got a problem. Unless our advising capacity and our support of students when they come, and listen, at least I think this is true. If we're going to be bringing more students into post-secondary education, into our colleges that haven't been there before, and may well have not been successful in their high school careers, they're going to need a little more help and support than students that were. And so without that kind of support, we can't succeed as a whole. And on the other hand, what administrators also have to realize is that, look, I mean, if we don't deliver a quality educational program, I mean, if people don't come here and get motivated and feel like, they learned something in those classes and it generated some kind of future for them, and I'm staying away from just a job because I'm very supportive of the combining the professional and the liberal arts, but it isn't all about the first job. There's a lot about going to college. In fact, as I said when David and I had a chance to talk, my own view is if it's only about getting a job, we won't be in business very long. Because people can do that in a lot of different ways. There's a lot more to a college experience than just getting a job. It is about learning to deal with different people, about being as part of a small group with a faculty member that cares, that relationship building. Hard to build that relationship with a computer. At least it is hard for me anyway. But, I guess I'll stop. I say, look, if we don't do this all together, we're not likely to succeed. If we do it all together, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of good, and we'll be doing it for a very long time. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And that, my friends, was a filibuster. No time for questions. No, I'm joking. Yasmin says we could take 5 minutes. I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks have. Yes? I guess Elaine's going to bring a microphone here. Now all we got to do is get it to work.
Keep talking.
There we go.
I have a question regarding your Wake Forest example.
Yeah.
And in my mind, one of the severe problems that Vermont has had for a long time and the VSC has had for a long time has to do with branding. So my question has to do with whether the VSC is intending to increase its marketing expenditures in the coming years.
I hope so. And I think, I often ask myself the question, and now I'm going to know I'm getting into hot water here. Why do we have 5 separate marketing organizations when we're one corporation and we only have 12,000 students altogether? I mean, I guess I get the answer pretty fast from most people that are at the college level is that we don't want to be slowed down. We know what we're doing. We're working hard, and we have our own brand. I think some sort of way of deploying corporate resources or togetherness resources to get us further will be helpful. We actually had a piece of legislation pass we actually had a very good legislative session this year. It's probably a honeymoon session for me, and not a lot had to do with money. But one thing I would mention for Vermont Tech here is in the capital bill, thanks to work by Tim and another one of our trustees and other legislators, the legislature agreed, surprised us by agreeing to appropriate $1 million this year and another $500,000 next year so that Vermont Technical College can upgrade its lab facilities here in Randolph Center and in Williston. And that was pretty good, so we had a successful session. But one of the things we did was we asked for, and the legislature approved, the ability of the Board of Trustees to change the corporate name if it so chose. And I have no idea whether they want to. But, myself, I actually do have some questions about whether Vermont State Colleges as a brand is really going to sort of encompass what I want to see us do is really let people know that, we are a system with 5 entities in it, but that, we can offer you a value that's higher. And I told you my goal, I'm firmly committed to this. Diane Pollock, our CIO, is here, is really completely changing the Chancellor's office, what's now the Vermont State College generic website, from one that just sort of, if you want to find out what our policies are or what the agendas are, you'd go there, to one where if you want to find out, like I already said, if you want to find out where you can take a course to be an accountant as a bachelor's or a master's degree, you come to that place and it'll direct us out. That it's much more of a generated marketing effort. So in some ways, yes, we do have limited funds. And I think what we have to do is sort of first figure out what our brand should be and make sure that the product that we have is like the way we want it. And then get the word out there. So I do see, yes, we're going to have to do that. But we've got some work to do before we get there. And at the same time, I'll also say is, look, I got news for you. I'll say to everybody is, and don't take this the wrong way, because I'll include myself in it. But I used to think that state government operated slowly, and I think higher education is like even more. And frankly, we got to be careful about that because, if you're looking at the Champlain colleges or the Southern New Hampshire University, they're moving fast, man. And, if we want to continue, we got to have to find a way to make some decisions and move along quickly too.
I really like you talking about how we need to showcase the work that we're doing in the VSC more and the important service that we provide to the state. And I'll tell you, I was in Boston over the weekend, and there was a full-page ad in the Boston Globe highlighting students in the public college system. And it was just a different story about the work that all the students, and I thought, what a simple but wonderful way to showcase the important work that public higher education does in the state in which it lives. And so I was wondering, what are some of your ideas about how we can showcase the good work that we do more?
Well, I think that's a good idea. I was thinking while you were saying that, what I ought to do is go out and see if I can raise some money to do that. And, that's another thing that I want to try to do. That, and I've asked people that have had experience with public systems where you're not, normally fundraising has not been a big part of public higher education because they generally were largely supported by the state. But now that we're in this situation, that becomes more of our job. We need to come up with the money, first of all, so that would be one. But I think partly what I do more and more is going out trying to get the word out about what we're doing. I think completely revising the website is one, and that's, as you know, anybody that's been involved with your own colleges, that's a big deal. It's not easy and it's not cheap to do it, but I think that will really help us. And then I think, I actually think exactly that. I like the idea of running some ads with like some of our interesting alumni that are standing in front of the Vermont Technical sign or the Castleton or Lyndon Johnson CCV and letting people know what we do. Yes?
How do we get a hold of you to send you our ideas?
Okay. Well, so as you know, we have a pretty simple protocol. Ours is like if you were at, one of the colleges, it would be actually Linden, I don't know, is it lsc.edu? Or is it at Linden, Yeah, so ours is simple. It's vsc.edu and it's just jeb.spaulding. It's pretty much the same everywhere. But I noticed, at least on their website at Linden, if you go to lsc.edu, you come up with some other place in Louisiana or something like that. So I think there it's like the Linden State. Okay. Well, listen, I guess we got to go on to the next session. And I think, Dave Berg, where are you? I saw you somewhere. You're going to be leading off with the panel here, is that right? That's right. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'd love to be with you.